yeah, no, it's on, but they'll edit it the minute
Yeah.
we open the meeting, John.
I almost forgot the bill, so I had to go back and get them. I'm sure Jeff would appreciate that.
Okay, why don't we open this meeting? We'll identify ourselves. Hi, my name's Bob Connors, 39 Annapolis Way. I'm the chair of the building committee.
Jeff Shaw, Principal of Context Architecture.
Eric Spahn, 14 Old Farm Way, Vice Chair.
Keith Lane, Mechanical Engineer from Garcia Gillespie D'Souza.
John Keller, 83 Scotland Road.
Mike Riley, Newbury.
All right, good morning, everybody. The handouts today were electronically sent to everybody last night, including all of you, the stakeholders. All right, so let's get going. So, items 1, 2 are just the public notices. Why don't we go to item number 3, the agenda for today? All right. As always, Jeff Shaw, it is your show.
Okay, well, it's going to be a lot of Keith today, but the package that I passed around, and there's more copies up here for anyone who wants them, 11 by 17 package has floor plans in it. We're starting to get a little bit more developed here as we sort of progress into design development. Basically, after today, this package is going to go to the cost estimator with some additional narratives on the HVAC, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, and site design elements and structural. So they can put together a cost estimate of the schematic design. Nothing's really changed with the plan, it's pretty much the same. The only thing you'll notice, Chief, is that we did manage to get another door into the interview room.
Nice.
We had to sort of change the way the vestibule works, but I think it's okay right now. Everything else is pretty much the same. Beyond the plans, we have now started showing the attic plan, which is sort of undeveloped at this point. It's basically raw open space, which may be the way we want it, but that's what it is right now. We can talk about subdividing it and how we would want to do that, and if we want to do that. You'll note there's no windows up there. It's basically really just an attic at this point. We also have elevation views of the west and the south building, and then that same corner view that I had sent out previously, showing the entry corner of the building, and this is still schematic design level. There's some tweaking we need to do to interior details, cornice line, eaves, maybe treating the siding a little bit differently where we can sort of mix it up a little bit, but this is the basic view of the building. And then the site plan I added at the end, which hasn't changed at all either, just to make a complete package. So we can, if there's any comments on the elevations in particular or anything else, we can talk about that. Otherwise, I'd like to turn it over to Keith to spend some time talking about the HVAC systems and the life cycle economic analysis that they perform.
All right, if I actually jumped ahead of myself. Before we go to Keith, if it's okay, we wanted to present the meeting minutes from our last meeting for review and approval. The February 8th meeting summary. They were circulated, there were no comments or corrections. So can we entertain a motion?
I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes as written.
Okay, second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 4. You know what I'd like to do, Jeff, before we get into Keith, is just to have a little discussion about the box, if that's okay. So what I had suggested was taking pictures of design elements that might be of some interest or at least be proffered for consideration. So I actually took a couple of pictures of some things. Now, obviously, this is subjective. Keith, you don't get one of these, I
Yeah, it's all right.
My little printer was running out of ink at 9:30 last night. So,
That's a big shoulder.
what, so from my perspective, it's, and again, this is always the contractor, untrained professional approaches, trying to find a design element that's already within the area, or ultimately just something you like. And so it, you know, for me, it's always been a curb appeal thing. How does it look from the front of the street when you pull up it? That's usually the lasting impression for me. So what, I know we talked about flipping the entryway in the conference room, the vestibule in the conference room. I would suggest having it enter from the front. There's such low traffic going to the police station on a daily basis that to walk the extra 25 feet to the entrance door, I think being able to create some sort of a design element on the front of the building, more standalone would, in my perspective, which again, is all it is, would be, should be considered. That cantilevered entryway there, which is something I saw, it looked, it's within the area in Essex County. The other thing is a combination of, we're not gonna be doing lead-coated copper cladding, or anything outside the, not on the front of the building anyway. So we're down to really two basic siding materials, clapboard and shingle. And what I've seen around here a lot, and actually personally like, is having clapboard, you start with a freeze board down the bottom, first story's clapboard, a band going around with a bit of a flare, and then shingles on the second floor. And it's enough of a break that it kind of breaks the box down into a couple of different things. Picking up the trim line of the front entryway, using that as kind of the control for that break between first and second floor, I think, my 2 cents. Now, I'm the only untrained person here.
Don't believe him on that.
Well, there's no shortage of opinions at the table or in the room, so I've got my 2 cents in. Eric, why don't you jump in with your,
Yeah, my 2 cents is I think you've done a great job getting the plan to fit in the rectangle place. That said, I can agree with Bob that although the police station doesn't have that many daily visitors coming through the front door, is that pretty good?
10 or 15, not a ton.
So in terms of parking, there's only so many parking spaces we'll use, and coming to the front. Like, I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist, and I think the building should have some civic presence to it, as opposed to more residential, and a little bit of dressing up on the front facade would go miles, as opposed to adding consistent trim all the way around the building. And this shouldn't look like a kind of sort of big house at the end of the day. It should look something civic. So you have a great opportunity, we all do, everybody does, to set something, a precedent in town for municipal buildings to look like a municipal building. But being in Newbury, not to be overdone in terms of full city kind of residence. So, yeah, there's lots of details, lots of trim work, lots of features. You know, if you really want to make the building special, should that little bump out be 2 stories on the front? Not to add square footage, but there's certain design elements that goes back to the classic kind of meeting house in New England. If you all know the general comments. John, I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yes, I agree with Bob and Eric, and I mentioned earlier, when we were talking with them about, kind of like the way the bank is, it has that nice New England, small look to it. It might lend itself to when the town hall gets redesigned, maybe it all kind of blends in nicely. I like Eric's comment about the 2-story at the entrance, it gives a few more feet upstairs on the second floor, but not a whole lot, and shouldn't impact the budget too bad. And I do like the idea of the two sidings, to kind of break it up. When you look at the stratum picture, it's kind of like one big mass, and rather repetitive.
Yeah, the stratum picture, actually Jim Moran had mentioned that to me, over the last few months, and I actually was up in that area. And stopped in and actually talked to the acting chief. And their building is over 10,000 square feet. It is not manned 24 hours. They do not have a dispatch area because they're on a regional system. So you add, you add or you deduct 500 square feet for dispatch. Their facility is about 10,500 square feet, and we're at 9,400.
Did you get a sense they have more personnel? or do
No, you know what, they're actually a smaller force, they have 11 full-time, but at night, there's no 24-hour
the security-
coverage,
that's
if you
who
walk
was-
up to a call box. Kind of a traditional, like, Southern New Hampshire type thing, but just interesting that their facility is 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And we're being efficient in the 9,400, 9,500 square foot range, so. All right, I think, so Jeff, I think you've got some sense.
Yeah, I think I got some ideas from what you're thinking and leaning towards. We'll be able to get this in for the cost estimator, so we at least
Okay.
have budget.
And I think too,
We can keep working on this, so.
there was a rendering that was generated when we were looking back at a combined facility, which was the old
Right.
town hall.
Do you have both of them? There's one that's brick and one that was siding.
Yeah, and then we did a rendering after that of the proposed
New.
mega building.
Right.
And so there's sort of three examples of them, but
So we should probably just bring those forward.
Yeah, I think, kick those back into the
Right.
queue for,
They have things that we either like or don't like on them,
Yeah.
so that we hope.
I mean, obviously, if there was a building already there that had a particular look, it would seem, looking at that and saying what we do to either tweak that, but obviously if that's the historical look for that area, it's always a good starting point.
I think I like the windows. I think Jeff has obviously looked at the windows in the back, making them different. The windows on the west side, depending on what you're really looking at, what the neighbors are looking in at. So you've already put some thought nicely into that.
Well, I think the simplicity of the roof line does add to the possibility of having solar panels or something like that too. And at our budget, we're not gonna get all that, complex and fancy, so. Any other chief, any comments in your pack?
I have zero opinion about the exterior, as long as the interior is functional, whatever you choose, it's fine with me.
I think what we're gonna wind up doing is, it'll be a collaborative effort where that, Jeff, you're gonna generate 2 or 3 different sequences of what the outside can look at. And I think when we do our next update with the Board of Selectmen, we'll bring those particular options forward. We can put some weight on them, 1, 2, 3, but at the end of the day, it's subjective.
Okay.
All right. Well, why don't we move on to Keith, let you.
Sort of normal commentary, Chris, for this
Yeah.
point.
Absolutely.
Alright, so our office prepared a life cycle cost analysis to study the most efficient systems for your building. And if you wanna open up to the executive summary, I think we just go to the payback summary chart, get a good outline of the results, and I'll walk through each system that we looked at. Okay, so in a life cycle analysis, we first establish a baseline system, and what we use at that point, this is the point of comparison to study systems that we know are more energy efficient against a code baseline. So for a building of this size and usage, the code baseline system would be constant volume air handling units. So you'd have basically, there'd be 5 of them for this project looking at the layout, so you get a little less individual control over the units, and you're gonna have more of them, and also, you're not gonna have a dedicated, like a boiler plant on that option, so you're saving some installation costs, but you're gonna spend a little more on operation costs, cause you're gonna need electric heat for other areas, gas-fired unit heaters. So that's the point, the baseline point. From there, we studied 3 high-efficiency systems. The first one would be an overhead VAV distribution system, where under that option, we studied 1 air handler for each floor, and you'd have a dedicated boiler providing hot water heat throughout the building. And that would be an overhead system, so you have mixed air, terminal VAV boxes that will modulate the airflow for the individual thermal comfort requirements of each space. The second option is a 4-pipe chilled water induction system, if you're familiar with those. So under this option, you have a hot water boiler plant, but you're also adding a chiller plant, which is gonna serve the air handling unit as well as the terminal induction units. Benefit of this system is that you're only providing the ventilation air required, so you're saving on ductwork and smaller air handling unit sizes. And the induction units, they induce air from within the space, so you're getting that mixed air effect within the box itself rather than from the air handling unit. So it saves you a lot of ductwork and as well as fan energy. Third option is similar in nature to the induction, where you have just a dedicated outside air handling unit serving the ventilation, but you'd have terminal VRF units, variable refrigerant flow, and these operate with direct expansion refrigerant for cooling, and they'll have a condensing unit for them. There'll probably be 2, maybe 3 overall for the project. 2 probably for the units themselves, and then 1 serving the air handling units. Under this option, you do not have a chiller, and we would definitely have a gas-fired condenser boiler plant where we'd have supplemental hot water heating throughout the building. So in extremely cold conditions, it's more efficient to operate the hot water heat than the electric heat pump for the VRF. And as we went through and studied, we looked at the gross capital investment for each option, as well as the annual operating costs, and as well as factored in the annual maintenance costs. And the results showed that option 3, the VRF, variable refrigerant flow system, was the most cost-effective system with a 4-year discounted payback, and over the 30-year life cycle study period, had a savings of $100,011,841. Any?
Well, certainly, the 4-pipe system is the preferred method if we had a chiller plant and all that, and it's certainly from we were in the 1 million square foot.
Larger building.
We would have all that in place, and the annual operating cost would be probably the most economical.
Silver scale.
To start up at this level for 9,500 square feet, probably. Keith, honestly, from me, thank you for doing this. This gives us a great package. One of the things that we've learned here in Newbury is simpler is better.
Absolutely.
We don't have a full-time facilities department. We don't have a building control system or anyone that can operate one, to be able to go on the system and adjust temperatures or that. And what seems to have worked best is gas-fired horizontal furnaces with an A coil and a condenser.
Okay.
And I actually have a little experience in mechanicals and HVAC, just from
Excellent.
past, just enough to be dangerous. What I actually see happening is high efficiency air handlers, gas-fired, natural gas, get 95%, high SEER rating, condensing units, 22, I don't even know what the highest is now,
See, it may not be as high as 22, but
18 or.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can. it'd be up there. And the VRF systems also have the highest SEER, and the furnaces just don't operate as efficiently that's essentially the baseline system.
Yep,
And
right.
we've installed them for projects this size before.
Yeah.
It's a very good system.
Yeah, over the long run, it could cost a few more cents to operate from a BTU standpoint, but the ease of maintaining them and keeping them running there, I mean, if we keep the filters, you change out the filters, and that's kind of all we're capable of from a municipality standpoint. So, you know, personally looking at this and looking at the number of CFMs of cooling as a baseline to do this, you know, my gut tells me we're gonna have 4 of those type systems, and then we're gonna have 2 other split systems that are gonna pick up whatever gray area we can't efficiently get or we need to zone further. So whether that's 4 4-ton systems, 2 per level, and then using a split to pick up whatever other area it is.
This being a 24/7, but then sometimes there's minimal people, and other times.
Well, that's what I'm
there's
saying, you know,
maximum people.
having,
So maybe for the training room, high occupancy room.
well, that's where having a split in there as a supplemental source when you have an occupancy load that
Bathrooms jammed.
it's 45 or 50.
Exactly, so you don't wanna be running full airflow.
Yeah, I mean,
Or you could have a dedicated unit for that.
again, our budget is like right here.
Sure thing.
And I've just designed the basic plain Jane that almost any HVAC contractor can wrap their hands around and do that, but, I mean, that's kind of my 2 cents. Chief, what's,
He's paid close attention to all
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
I could not,
Yeah.
whatever the committee decides on the heating, simple is good. We're police officers, I don't know anything about this stuff.
Sure.
so Keith, as long as the thermostat's located in his office.
Oh, exactly.
That's the
I
key
just want
element.
control over everything.
All 4
Turn off the tape.
Yeah.
The whole building.
John made a great point, if we keep it cooler, it gets the guys out on the road into their cars faster.
There you go, right.
But, no, much like the siding, as long as it's functional, it's simple for us, if there's an issue, you know, we can get somebody down to deal with it instead of waiting 2 weeks because it's a complicated system type thing. That's all I care about.
I mean, we have a little more sophisticated system at another public facility at our library, and the design was state of the art. It's just that at the end of the day, we wound up circumventing all the control systems because no one had the access to, or the ability to adjust it online.
Sure, and a
Basic
lot, I would
program.
say that a lot of these, even the VRF system, it comes, that you can get those systems with its own controls package that could control the whole building. And they are very user-friendly, and there would be owner training provided as part of our specifications during the installation. It's not as advanced, but you would have a boiler plant, so there would be that extra component where if you're more comfortable with the furnaces, it removes it.
What, out of all these systems, I guess I should say that of the baseline and the VRF system, in terms of the design of the building and the space needed above ceilings, what would be the trade-offs between the two?
The trade-offs will be, you're gonna need more ceiling space for the furnace option because you're gonna have larger ductwork. You're gonna have some more penetrations for outside air intakes.
Right.
Well, you could group them into a plenum at one point, but it's really increased ductwork for that option.
Mhm.
With the VRF option, you're gonna have refrigerant running throughout the building and also hot water. So that would really be the 2 variances, and you're gonna have a larger mechanical room for the boiler plant for the VRF option, where you would not have that.
Right. So in the design that we have currently, we have a small boiler room and tight floor-to-floors. So we're gonna have to give up one of those things.
Well, when you say tight floor to floors, you're doing 13 feet.
Or 1210, I think.
Okay, so, I mean, 10-foot ceiling heights would be max, this is probably 9 here. I mean, so we're going to create at least a 3-foot dead space above the ceiling for mechanicals.
And if the units are broken out, I know you said you would estimate about 4 units, and in our study, we assumed 5 units for that,
Well, the
so.
4 + 2 was with the splits being.
Yeah, exactly, so that, under our option, we, gave the training room its own dedicated unit, so that way, you know, so if you did splits, either way. But the largest unit under that would be the second floor, would be about 2,000 CFM. And then the first floor offices would be about 1,300 CFM. So we did break them out. The ductwork won't be that large.
So you say
So
like-
basically 5-ton, 3-ton systems is what.
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay. I want to translate that because of our stakeholders. There's
Sure.
varying levels of understanding. I want to make it as.
The overall building is approximately 17 tons for a total load.
So, to put a finer point on it for you, Chief, the reality is it comes down to how much do we wanna pay when we buy the systems versus how much do you wanna pay on an annual basis over the lifetime out of the operating budget.
Right.
And there's really not a whole lot of difference. I mean, if you look at it over 30 years, there's over $100,000 worth of difference. But on an annual basis, using these numbers, it's about $7,000 a year between maintenance and operation expenses that you end up paying between the one system and the other.
Right, it would be easier for me to go before the town meeting and ask for more money in my operating budget to operate the system than to go and ask for more money for the building project, so.
And it's about roughly about less than $20,000 on the order of magnitude for the construction cost between the two systems. So the reality is we're not talking about a lot of money on the table here, and so I think it's better to think about it as Bob said, how simple is it? How easy is it to get people to come and fix things?
Right.
When it breaks, to get parts, you know, that sort of thing. How long is this stuff gonna last? When you have a VRF system, Keith, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but many times it's the head that will go and you end up having to replace the entire head unit. You know, the box on the wall,
Yeah.
that has to come off and you gotta get a new one because it's all basically a big computer.
Yeah.
And to fix it and to really replace parts, just like it is with a lot of electronic devices, it's not worth.
And you're locked into that manufacturer essentially.
That's the hard part.
That's the,
We've waited, trying to get controls. We're
yeah,
waiting 3 weeks for Samsung or somebody else.
I see, yeah.
Basically, the other option is I can call an HVAC company to come down and.
It's the pretty standard, you know.
I like that,
Run-of-the-mill.
I like that option.
Yeah.
But as
Pipes
far
and
as,
fans.
yeah, as far as space
Yeah.
goes, will that type of option fit in this?
Yeah, like
Nice
Keith
design.
said, that this would need less for a boiler room.
Okay.
Right now, our boiler room's tiny,
Yes.
and so I think these guys would appreciate having to fit less stuff in it.
No, the subcontractors will.
I mean, the other thing would be that the building today, I mean, obviously, the R factor, I'm assuming we're probably gonna do some sort of a spray foam, or whether it's open or closed.
Right now, we
so-
have rigid foam on the outside of the building, 4 inches, not foam, we have Roxol, mineral wall on the outside of the building, 4
Okay.
inches. So we have a continuous insulated layer over the entire building, which Keith plugged into his energy model.
Yeah.
Would we consider, is there any reason we wouldn't try to look at like a closed cell or open cell?
Just depends on where you put it, and
We can, we found it's easier to construct the building with this
Without it,
exterior
okay.
envelope setup than it is trying to get the stud base filled with spray foam and then get the vapor barrier on the right side and all that.
Jeff, could you repeat that? What's the system on the outside for insulation?
4 inches of mineral wool on the
Okay.
exterior.
is there gonna be any process that, in terms of that 4 inches, that there's any value or thought to more insulation than reduces the mechanical load, which?
So we haven't looked at it on this building in particular, but we have done this analysis on other building projects, and it rarely, if ever, has paid back any dividends.
Yeah.
And then to that point, I think if you take the 12-10 and you take out a 6-inch plus or minus slab, if the biggest beam is 18, you're left with 2 feet, or you're left with 1 foot 10 or 20 inches between the bottom of steel and the ceiling at a 9-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
So 20 inches for
Yeah.
ductwork should be more than enough to.
Yeah, it may be tight in some areas, but it'll work, especially,
We've got sprinkler
If it's-
pipe, drain
yeah.
pipes,
it's
light fixtures.
exactly, the other components,
Yeah.
that's where it gets stuck.
Keep your deck work at 8 inches.
Yeah.
Stand it off the shelf.
Might need a couple more units.
Well, again, the simplicity of the install will be, the delta will be much far greater than 22, going from
Yeah.
mesh down to the plain Jane, I think. But, I mean, the energy envelope here is going to be, heating or cooling this building is not gonna be extraordinary. The window package and door package, I think, is the real key, making sure that we're not, whatever that may be, I think that's my main focus. That's gonna be our greatest heat loss.
Yeah, it's the windows and your roof where you really see the greatest impact.
Jeff, on the exterior siding from insulation, do you, what's your experience with putting a rigid on the exterior, like on a Z-clip with a wood nailer and then the siding? Is that something you've bumped into?
So we've done rigid foam on the exterior. It's a little harder now to do that because of NFPA requirements, but you know, you can get it with a foil-based. It's a little bit easier to install that with strapping or clips, and you can just screw through the foam, and the foam basically supports it. Whereas the mineral wool, you actually have to have some sort of framing system, clips, or some sort of, you know, girt in the cavity wall to actually support the siding that's hanging off the side of the building. So I liked doing it out of in the past because of that rigidity and that structural capacity for it. But we do run into the NFPA issues with it, flammability issues with it, so.
And
Just have to look at that.
So the exterior wall framing, Jeff, is that 2 by
It has
6?
to be a tested
It's metal frame,
assembly,
Metal frame,
and so the
but
product's
everyone's
gotta
about,
go.
what's the,
6 inches.
Great idea,
inches,
just
okay.
can't get by. Okay, thanks.
That simplest is better, I mean, we've had people
Well,
at.
you know, we've learned the hard way. I mean, just being involved in trying to help out down at the town barn and the city town hall and doing some stuff for the library, and it's kind of, you have a Riello oil burner in your house, and your oil burner man comes in and says, what is it? 'Cause it's not a Beckett burner. Everybody can fix that, but the Riello is, it's magic to get it, so I think it's kind of the same thing up here in Newbury RFD. So Keith, why don't we move on to domestic hot water? I mean, I've seen this demo where we put in a large capacity, 120 gallon system with a continuous loop, or we actually almost do a point of need type of system where that, you know, we run cold domestic water up to the locker rooms and then we heat it right there, so we don't have a run of 200 feet of pipe that we're recirculating or maintaining. What's your thoughts on that, or is that outside your?
That's outside of my realm,
Okay.
but I am familiar that we have used both systems
Yeah.
for a smaller project like this, instantaneous.
We've done actually in bigger projects too, like a 35,000 square foot police station, it's actually in bidding right now. That's exactly how it's set up.
Okay.
It has 12 cells, the whole thing is point of use, because they chose not to put any systems in the building that had fossil fuels in it. They wanted to go all electric. So we had to do point of use essentially. And so that could work. It could also be a hybrid approach where, you know, because the boiler room is right below those showers, maybe we do have a water heater for the shower area, you know, a couple other things, and then everything else, sinks and bathrooms, things like that's all point of use.
Typically, what we're doing now at an institutional level, is we run cold water and Insta-Hot under the,
Yeah.
under the sink base, and that's providing enough hot water to take care of that, but again, I think getting back to,
I think that definitely could be
Okay.
part of the mix.
I would suggest just kind of filing that away and seeing if we can, incorporate something like that, that keeps it along a simple line.
Mm-hmm.
Keith, what equipment line, although I know this is public bid, but what equipment manufacturer has been enjoying the best reputation? Are they all kind of in the same,
Well, we.
not to give a
in-
plug for Lennox or,
No, yeah,
Sarah,
I don't really specify too many of the furnace type units, deal with a lot of larger.
but on the
equipment,
condensers, on the refrigeration side?
but Train, Carrier, any of those companies, they're all very similar. We've had no issues with anyone recently.
Okay. Anything else, Keith?
No, unless you have any further questions, it's.
Okay.
So we're gonna move forward with the baseline system. I'd like to give them direction to be able to start design.
Yeah, well, why don't we do this,
We wanna-
Eric, did the system that I kind of mentioned here,
Yeah.
is that, John, is that kind of
Sounds
where
great.
we're,
Yeah,
We see
I'm a fan
wisdom.
of multiple units, so if one goes down, you still got something, out of one unit.
Right. It would be in other areas,
Right.
so you would never done this in a space.
Right.
I mean, I've actually seen that where the refrigeration side is actually a heat pump and it's augmented by having a gas horizontal furnace. So you get, but I think simple rather than complex, Keith, I think is.
Sure thing, I'm gonna give you what you want.
Yeah, we want the Maytag repairman to be able to come in and fix it.
Alright,
With a screwdriver and a flashlight.
try to design it so that you don't have to call them. This thing running nice for
That's
us.
why we want Maytag.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So does the rooftop unit fit within the attic?
So right now, we don't have any roof really. It would all have to be separate room essentially in the attic with louvered, that sort of thing.
Then you'd have a condensing unit outside, it's.
Yeah, I mean, I'm visualizing, we're gonna keep all the condensing units on the fire department side, just for, I mean, even though the decibels are pretty moderate now, but, and out of respect to the neighborhood, not putting half a dozen condensing units on the,
Yeah, it would be
Condensing
in
farm.
maybe that little area back there by the garages.
I mean, and the splits we can hang off the wall too, that we can just create a pad, but, I mean, I'm looking at it, nothing in the attic, to be honest with you. I'm looking at it that the ceiling above on the second floor will have a horizontal furnace in it with its ductwork, refrigeration lines running outside down to an exterior condenser, and then obviously running condensate and your, I mean, typically, what is it, 2-inch or 3-inch PVC that's running out these high efficiencies then, on the furnaces,
For, condensate?
yeah, well, condensate, no, but the intake,
Oh, yeah,
combustible,
these, probably two,
2-inch.
yeah, 3 maybe for your largest,
Okay.
yeah.
That'll just be, how we run that and consider that, but,
Alright, find the best associations.
all right, I think, Keith, thank you, this was very helpful.
Alright, absolutely.
I mean, and I think what it does is it gives us the ability to make a informed decision and never to turn a blind eye to savings, operational savings. Keeping them operational has been a struggle in Newbury in the past, so.
And we wanna give you something that you're comfortable with and happy with.
Well, you know what, if we were downtown Boston and we had a centralized control system, I mean, we'd be dealing with a 4-pipe system anyway.
Yeah.
That's not the case up here, so.
Alright.
On controls, do you expect that this system will have the DDC, or are we gonna end up having a building management system?
Well,
What level of controls do you expect?
we would usually have a building management system and still do that, or town desires just programmable thermostats, it probably wouldn't be the most energy efficiency option. Is your concern that you just have no desire for an ATC system?
No, what happens is that we don't have any facility people that can operate it.
Sure.
It'll be the
So for
chief.
these furnaces, you'd prefer just programmable thermostat?
Yeah, I mean, a Honeywell round thermostat with a sub base, whatever we're normally used to, I think is, again, the sacrifice in some operational savings will be outweighed by the ability to keep it running without any,
If you have it, they don't use it,
yeah.
Yeah.
so it's not doing anything.
And it's
That's what's happened
cost
that's what happened at the library.
Well, that's my point, there's a cost to put it in for the ATC,
Right.
Yeah.
contractor to come in and make a big system, and then if it's not gonna get used, or
Yeah.
people
See,
can't figure it out.
That's what we've learned, is that it's just not,
It's just
what happens then,
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
you're spending an extra 40 to 60K on a hybrid system with controls
Yeah,
that you're amortizing over a 30-year bond with, at 4.5%.
and
So,
essentially being a 24/7 operating facility,
Yeah,
your scheduling won't be as intricate as
right.
a larger building would be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very good to know.
All right, thank you, Keith.
Alright, thank you. Good.
All right, so, moving down. All right. CTX invoice, it's in your package. Jeff, I think what would be helpful, can you break out a payment schedule for the remainder of your contract on what milestones?
Yeah, I had given
accomplished?
one to Kevin, I don't know if he was able to put it in there, but I can do that again.
Yeah, no, if he has that, to me, that would be helpful. And the same for Kevin.
Yeah, you can keep it on your back. You give it to him. Yeah, right.
That way there, we just know that as we go through
Yeah, thank you.
design development, there's a value of X. And so on for CDs and then. Okay. So typically our protocol's been, Kevin writes up a recommendation on this. So what I would suggest, why don't we conditionally approve this, subject to Kevin's letter of recommendation,
Yep.
which is just more compliance than anything else. So motion,
Make a motion that we approve the context bill and the vertex bill.
okay. Subject to the Vertex,
I'll go through this, so, I'll second that.
okay. All right, any discussion?
Is there any discussion on, well, no discussion on this, on approving this?
Okay. All right, all in favor? All right, great.
Is there any change, as you just said, to the process of who
We need to sign
receives the
that.
bill first? And oh, I guess-
Well, normally, everything goes through Kevin,
Yeah,
and Kevin would then do a letter of recommendation, which is his cursory review of the invoice versus contract or work completed to date.
That's it, that's it.
Is it just the top one here we get assigned, John?
The second packet I go to, one is for vertex and one is for context.
there's two cover sheets the same. You've got two sets of papers.
Oh, there's two sets here, oh, okay. Pardon me as I drowned in paper here. All right. Thank you, John.
And what I'll do is I'll wait for, I'll reach out to Kevin to get that notification, then I'll get these over to the office so they make the next warrant and everybody's happy.
So we've kind of skipped around here. I think we've, item 6 would be talking about the exterior concept. I think we've kind of kicked that can around. And thank you for doing that. Just starting out with that just really gives us all a chance to, you know, to offer our 2 cents. All right, we've covered item 8, which is Kate's presentation. Project schedule, we have no change at this point. I think that what will probably happen is, our schedule calls for a March 15th update on the schematic design. We'll should have something around that.
And we'll have our cost estimate for that
Okay.
meeting as well.
Okay. We had a very good meeting, Jeff, with the Board of Selectmen, and the feedback is that both the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, which is absolutely no surprise to me, are willing to participate in joint meetings, and then scheduling special meetings. So that if we kick off a joint meeting, and there's additional information required, and we can turn it around in 2 weeks, which probably is, I would think, doable.
Yeah.
Then we can just, they'll schedule the next meeting to be continued for 2
Yeah,
weeks.
that'd be great.
All right, and then I think what that'll do is, it will provide your team with more time. And if that results in moving things up a little bit, fine, but I think giving you more time is always in the project's best interest. So
That's great.
all right, so, schedule. Estimate of probable cost. I mean, I think, from my viewpoint, based on all of our experience, we're following industry standards on percentages. Kevin has provided some feedback on looking back over the last 6 to 12 months, what's gone out to bid. We all know one thing, it's a public bid process, that ultimately determines what the budget is. I don't see any reason to change that, and more placeholders at this point. And I think waiting for the March 15th update of estimate, we can then review and revise.
Is there anything that we haven't thought about or asked for? Because if you don't get it in the budget now, no one can make a logical choice on it, and it's just an add later. So are we missing anything, Jeff? And I think maybe if there's any sustainability options, I mean, we're not gonna get to CDs and all of a sudden say, hey, let's, if we add solar panels, we should know that as an option now so that the structural can weigh in on it. We could always take it out or not accept it.
Yeah.
And you can't make a decision if you're saying, well, let's add solar panels, and someone says, what's the cost? And you're like, I don't know. So now is the time to put anything, the flagpole, I don't know, something on it.
Yeah, I
Yes.
don't have anything in my court other than things that we've kind of already talked about and sort of dismissed, but in terms of the building, I think even the example of solar panels isn't gonna change what we would do. The roof will be able to support it, we'll have, essentially it'd be a conduit path through the building, so that's gonna be fairly inexpensive.
Mhm.
It would be more an issue on the owner side for many of these things. It would be an issue on the soft cost side, or if there was grants available for certain things that you want to take advantage of. I guess my only concern would be there'd be a sufficient amount of budget in the furnishings and equipment for everything that's gonna go into the building. I think that's already been discussed to some level, so there seems to be a comfort level that we've got what we need in the project. The tower is the other piece that's sort of hanging out there as well,
Right.
which we are carrying some money for, I think, but.
I think we were anticipating that TCS would be here today, but I think we'll just push that, obviously, with Kevin's absence and having Keith here, maybe we'll push for getting TCS here on our next meeting if possible, or in one of our upcoming meetings.
Chief, are we on track to get a furniture sort of schedule?
I forwarded Jeff and Bob the furniture that we'd be transferring from the station into the new
So I
facility.
think Kevin was gonna work up a list of everything else that needed to be,
Okay, so it's clearly identified that these are furniture,
Purchased.
not built-in kind of things.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so he was gonna put that together, I don't know where he is.
So we should remind Kevin that we need that before.
Okay. John, put that in the notes on that,
Yeah.
all right, just to give Kevin a nudge on that.
So it arrives at the same time or before the.
So Jeff, following up on Eric's comments about solar, what provision should we make is, do we need capacity in the electrical room so that, or, because most solar is what, it gets DC, then it gets converted back
Yeah.
to.
So we used to be able to put the inverter in the electric room. I don't believe we're able to do that anymore. I think that has to go outside the building.
Okay.
But, so that'd probably be wall mounted.
Near the panel, or the
The
meter
service,
truck?
yeah.
Okay.
And so I think, from our perspective, the building design perspective, it's more about a pathway, creating a conduit pathway between
Okay.
these points so you can get up to the roof with the weatherhead
Mhm.
and down to the shut off. The only other consideration would be the materials on the roof, and asphalt shingles are acceptable, so
Okay.
that's not a problem.
All right.
Exactly, okay.
Anything else on that, or we move on to we have the Vertex invoice, which we've already signed off on. I think we looked at that at the last meeting. Any other questions on that or discussion on that?
No, I'll just reach out to Kevin to get the
Okay,
finance pieces,
all right.
keep that process rolling.
Okay, we certainly Vertex meeting notes. Thanks again, Jeff and Kevin, your meeting notes make it paints a very good picture of what we're accomplishing at each meeting. I know John was appreciative to the effort. And thank you, John, for getting the meeting notes over in a timely fashion. All right, so communications, we had a communication from Jim Moran, and it was regarding, it's at the tail end of our package here. Jim was talking about the budget. He had some particular questions per line item. See if I can find it here. I think my suggestion is we take it under advisement, we get an update coming, and we address it at a later date.
Yeah, the next estimate will be a lot more detailed than.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we kind of answered that where that, these are, the word probable and estimate, I think sum up where we're at on this. I think having a reserve for construction escalation is good simply because we started this in May of 2018, it's gonna go to bid in, August of 2019. My only concern is 4% may not be enough, but having some basis there to fall back on is better than that, but any other questions on, or comments on Jim's?
I support what we've done being an OPM and doing budgets
Yeah,
and
I mean,
working with
we're
architects.
the professionals that do this every day, and
Standard procedure, people get concerned, the design fee gets lowered each time we do a cost estimate, it goes away, so it's maybe just people not understanding what it takes to do this.
and I think what happens is, what we've all learned is the aggregate sum will get expended, it's just what pile it gets moved to.
Is there design contingency within the estimate?
Typically there will be, yeah, at schematic design, we'll probably have a 10% design contingency.
So design contingency is separate from a construction, I don't know what's gonna happen. The design contingency is estimator just doesn't have enough detail because there's not enough detail in the documents.
Right,
So he's putting it in there, it will get spent.
right.
It's not something that gets cut or saved.
I mean, we're not kidding ourselves, we're at just under 6.9, and certainly we may have a couple of $100,000 of line items that are conservative, but where we have a challenge to get down to 6.5. Unless the market changes. But I think we are at the most innovative and efficient level we can be at. And again, when you use the Stratham Police Station in New Hampshire, it is bigger than what we're proposing, and we're a full-time and bigger police department. This is it. I can make an overwhelming case, I think, as the committee can, that this is in the best interest of the community.
Great.
All right, why don't we open this up to our bosses, the real stakeholders of Newbury, the taxpayer. Gents, if you have any comments, you don't even have to get up, because you know what happens is, unless you're standing behind the chief, no one sees you on TV. So if you just state your name and your address, I think that just helps people chronologically.
Tony Matthews, Main Street. There hasn't been any results from the borings?
We haven't got, we haven't seen the final report from the engineer. Jeff, what's your time frame on that?
It should be early next week. We're trying to get it for today. It didn't happen for today, but it should be early next week.
So
They did do the
the next meeting-
borings at our last meeting. They did find quite a deep layer of fill that was there, which I think some of it was expected. I think the depth of it was a little surprising.
Right.
So I don't yet know what their recommendations are for the foundation
For the
design.
soil system, for the foundation system. I think we get 17 to 22 feet, I think was the range on the fill layer, which is surprising for me. I mean, it's not extraordinary. Certainly there's a foundation system that will be designed, and I think once we have that, we'll then explore the different systems that we can look at to overcome any bearing issues we need for the foundation.
Will be some.
Yeah, no, I think we anticipated it, and I think
Yeah.
part of having a contingency of 10% is, once you go outside the norms on that, I mean, that could be a couple $100,000 add to the construction cost, but we've got $650,000 in a contingency line item. So that would offset it. It wouldn't impact the overall budget amount, but hence, that's why these things are broken out like that.
One other question, radiant floor heat wasn't discussed or even considered for this building?
It is fabulous to have. I have it in my own house, Tony. It is bloody expensive
To install?
to install, and traditionally in a commercial application like this, radiant heat, I've not seen it used, to be honest with you.
I would say that if we were expecting to do a building where we had significantly more people per square foot in the
Yeah.
building, that it might be a reasonable alternative, especially from a comfort level.
Right.
But there's so many people in a police station typically, that are there even 9 to 5, let alone overnight, that it's not worth heating the slab in all parts of the building to handle that occupancy.
That can't be zoned out like a.
It can,
gas system?
it can, and it frequently is. The issue is the recovery time. So if you are spending a lot of energy to heat up the slab, and you're only gonna sort of a sporadic occupancy, you can turn it off, but it'll take hours before it comes back down to temp, and then hours again to come back up. So the radiant system ideally should be sort of a consistent model of use, occupancy daily. And we just don't have that in police stations typically.
I would guesstimate, Tony, it would add 35% to the mechanical line item. And then the potential, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing, is we just don't have any budget capacity to look at it. It's fabulous. It's absolutely, you're never hot, you're never cold, you never know where it's coming from. But there's an extraordinary cost to pay for that.
Because they did put it in the Byfield Firehouse.
Yeah.
That's all radiant heat in there.
Yeah, no, that's, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. It just, it's. Any other questions, Fred? Or-
Fred Lowe, Dodger Street. Chief, any update with the negotiations with Seabrook?
Not yet. Bob asked me that a couple of days ago. I haven't heard anything yet, but it is being put on their radar.
All right, Fred, any, Fred, you, just say your name, Fred. You don't have to come up unless you want.
myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, you know, I really, really like what Bob has said. You know, we need to keep this simple and effective. I'm always basing this on the library that was built
No, I know you are, Fred. We're-
20
we're
years ago.
We're keeping that in mind,
You
too.
know, that year-round, they only use them in the wintertime, but there's 22 electric plug-in heaters there. So we need to make sure that we don't have to do that in the police station. You know, the exterior looks like if they could have just put some cedar siding on it and had it blend into the community. You know, that's my thoughts. And the chief knows everything about the inside. I do know a little bit about the outside. You know, I just did a house, one of my houses over in Byfield. Did 70% clapboards and 30% cedar shakes. You drive into the property, see the cedar shakes, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. You know, you go down to the town hall, you see the cedar shakes. It's absolutely beautiful. My feeling for this building is it should just stay one thing, just the clapboards. You know, I can't see breaking it up. That's just my opinion. You know, we want it to blend in. We don't want it to stand out. You know, maybe if you wanted to put it on the front, you know, maybe some, what I've seen really change buildings and projects is just some cedar shakes on, cedar next to the window.
Vertical trim, or
No.
like 1x5, 1x4 vertical
What
cedar?
do you see all over New England with the, next to the windows there?
Shutters.
Shutters.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We just put some simple cedar shutters, shutters on the front of the building. It really makes a big difference. You know, and Jeff had mentioned something about black asphalt on the, or asphalt on the roof. I think that's, you know, that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect. It like blends in, you know, and if you do the town hall over and you put the shakes on there, it's a small building. It really looks beautiful. You know, but if you try to split this up, I don't know if you're talking just about the front or all the way around. You know, my
Where's that,
feeling
you know,
is-
where's the picture? I don't have a copy of, so, here's, what we were talking about,
you know,
having clapboard and then having a flare, which would be at your halfway point, but it picks up at this roof line. Yeah, and again, this is just all
Yeah.
work in
It's
progress.
just see this picture here, I think is the perfect color.
Yeah,
But we're not picking out colors yet.
no, you know what, I mean, this will be,
But I'm just obsessed with the exterior, as you know.
Fred, we hadn't noticed.
Well, it's because, you know,
Well, at the end of the day, it's all you see. Rest of it
it's all you
is,
see. I
Most of
mean,
the time, most people, that's about as far as they get into the police.
Yeah, hopefully.
You're right.
Hopefully. Although I've been in the interior before. But it's like, you know, it's, up at the library, it's, I don't know what the color of the bottom is, and the top is red, and the outside, I haven't heard anything about vinyl here, which is good.
I don't even know if you can, vinyl even an option?
Oh, certainly, it's an option, I don't
Yeah, no,
recommend it.
Yeah, no, we're not,
And with the
We're
paints
not at-
we
we're
have
not at
today,
that
the
level of
shingles we have
budget,
today, they won't have to touch that in 20 years.
I mean, I think for what our plan is, which you've heard is, we're gonna come up with 3 exterior
Yeah,
options, call it good, better, best. There'll be a value to each one.
Yeah.
And then it will be so subjective because I think we all have different
Yeah.
views.
I'm just putting my 2 cents worth.
Listen, you're.
Or 5 cents worth.
You got your quarter's worth then. So.
But, you know, it's amazing how much you guys have accomplished in such a short period of time. It's like, amazing.
Fred, the actual easiest part of a project like this is what we're doing, building it. It really is. The easiest part is actually, once you've got everything else decided, building it with a budget. Because at the end of the day, math always tells us how far we can go.
Absolutely. And you talk about Stratham building a 10,000 square foot police station. Doesn't mean they needed it, you know?
Well, I mean, if they had dispatch, they would have been at 10,500 square feet.
So I think, you know, the chief has worked his ass off to just bring this in to, you know,
And they do have a training room in Stratham. Now, their EOC is remote because the fire department is 24/7 and that's how they chose to do it.
I
But
just feel like if you could save $1 million here and $1 million there. I remember back in the year 2000, they wanted to do town-wide trash collection here. And I said, no, we're not, and I.
So you're the guy that screwed
And I
that
bought
up.
it. And I
You shut the
bought it.
door?
And finally, they had a transfer station, which is nothing to do with us anymore. So that saved probably at least $500,000 a year. So, you know, savings, $500,000 here and $500,000 there, it's not bad.
No, it's good. I mean, listen, I think if there's anything we've tried to convey is we're very sensitive.
Absolutely.
We're managing our costs, but I think what we're gonna rely on you gentlemen, because, you know, you're participating, you're active participants. We're gonna be providing an update at town meeting, at the annual town meeting. And wherever our probable estimate of cost is what we're going to present.
Yeah.
And so if that is at 6.7 or 6.8 or whatever that may be, there's really no other,
Yeah.
there's no other way to really save money at this point that we can think of without, we're eliminating options up front that may have a little impact over the long run in operating.
Well, I feel whichever way you go, you're gonna get a lot of support.
But I think, you know what, you guys have been participants and it's, you know, certainly speak your mind, and if you're in support of, you know, where we're at and where we're headed, I think, you know, your voice carries a lot of weight as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks.
Well, gentlemen, I don't know if there's anything else. I think the only thing we have left is our next meeting is,
Did you say 3:15?
3:15.
okay, so March 15th is our next meeting?
Yep.
All right. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion that we adjourn the meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.